Good afternoon, you're watching A News. I'm Katie Wilson. Let's see the top stories making the headlines. Hundreds are dead and nearly 1,000 remain missing after devastating flash floods hit Nepal and Tibet. Iran says it is preparing conditions to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as the conflict reaches the 6-month mark. And protesters in Pakistan call for answers after the fatal hospital fire that killed 14 newborn babies. Thanks for joining us. We begin in Asia, where the death toll from the devastating flash floods in Nepal has risen to 469. Close to 1,000 people are still missing in Nepal and neighbouring Tibet, with an international search and rescue effort underway.
Rescue teams are using heavy machinery, helicopters and search dogs to recover bodies and look for survivors after a massive surge of water, ice, mud and debris swept through Himalayan river valleys. Authorities are now warning of a possible second disaster, as debris blocking the Botakoshi River has created a lake that is continuing to rise. China says millions of cubic meters of water could flow into the area in the coming days, raising concerns over further flooding. The disaster destroyed roads, bridges and power facilities along a key route connecting Kathmandu with Lhasa in Tibet. At least 540 missing people are foreign nationals, including tourists and pilgrims. Japan says 5 of its citizens believed to be on a tour in Nepal are missing.
The Japanese government will continue to make every effort to ensure the safety of Japanese nationals.
Australia says the number of missing Australians has risen to 39 and has announced $3.6 million in aid for affected communities.
We've got about 20 people now deployed or who are employed by Australia in Nepal. We are adding to that. We will build on those resources over the next days as we are able and depending on the need.
International rescue and relief efforts are continuing as authorities race against time to find those still missing and prevent further damage.
Well, among those still unaccounted for in Nepal's deadly flash floods are hundreds of foreign nationals, most of them tourists. Families both in Nepal and abroad continue to wait for news of their loved ones.
A new threat is complicating rescue efforts along the Nepal-China border. A landslide has created a lake that is now overflowing, forcing rescue teams to temporarily suspend operations in some areas. Residents in Nepal's Nuwakot district have been evacuating to higher ground in Trishuli amid fears that river levels could rise further. The disaster has killed hundreds of people across Nepal and Tibet, with more than 1,000 people still missing across Nepal and Tibet. Among those unaccounted for are foreign nationals, including tourists and pilgrims from the United States, India, Australia, the UK and other countries. At emergency centres, families are checking lists of those rescued and missing, hoping for news of their loved ones. In Nuwakot, one relative described the anguish of not knowing what happened to his brother.
My brother should be rescued. I don't know how and where he is. He has been missing for 3 days.
The disaster has also triggered an international search for missing travellers. Among them is Srinivas Sudhir Rangu, an Indian-born US resident who was trekking towards Tibet's Mount Kailash with 9 friends when the flood struck. His wife, Sneha Sudhir, says the group has been out of contact since the disaster.
It's more than stressing out. It's devastating, right? So because first thing, I am not sure what my family is going through right there. And I have lost contact, or we have lost contact for last 48 hours. Emotionally taking us a toll on. We are here and we are looking for authorities to help, but we have got no one who's coming forward to help us give information.
Sudhir says the families of the missing men are supporting one another and trying to obtain information from authorities in Nepal, India and the United States. Her home has become a coordination point, with family members and friends helping manage calls and messages as they wait for updates. Rescue teams continue searching in difficult conditions, but the overflowing landslide lake and the risk of further flooding are making the operation even more dangerous.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Dr. Basanta Raj Adhikari, Director of the Centre for Disaster Studies at Tribhuvan University, who's in Nepal at the moment. Thank you for joining us today. Now, you're in Kathmandu. Could you tell us a bit about what you're seeing from the capital?
Thank you for having me. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So, the situation, as you have seen in the video, is not that good. The situation is very bad. The rescue operation is really ongoing, but it is very difficult. But this is very unprecedented event. What we have observed in recent history in Nepal, Himalaya, and surrounding.
Yeah, the pictures were really harrowing, and there's concerns that a barrier lake which formed after Wednesday's landslide, that they could trigger further floods. What have you heard about this, and do you share those concerns?
Yeah, the rock slide or the ice avalanche that blocked the river for some time. Now it was drained 2 days before, but what we have seen from the drone footage is that again water is ponding in especially two small lakes. It's around we are supposing or estimating 5 million cubic meter of water that can be breach time, but we just got the information that the river was overflowing slowly. So for now, there is no risk, but the risk might be there in future, in days to come.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us more about those rescue efforts that are taking place and the difficulties in access of reaching people?
Yeah, the rescue effort is actually going on. It is very difficult as the government is deploying the helicopter of Nepali army and then the private helicopters. But the bad thing is that most of the roads were washed away, and we didn't have still wouldn't have road for the physical access. So it is very difficult to bring the heavy machinery for the rescue efforts. But the government of Nepal, and we're trying our best to recover the body and the recover of the live people from that area. But when you see the videos that you are now playing, is that most of the villages were buried beneath the mud. So it is very difficult for now to do the rescue operation, and I hope the government of Nepal will complete within a week or 2 weeks of time.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it's very much ongoing. One aid worker spoke to the BBC and said there's still hope of finding survivors here. Do you share that optimism?
Yes, I do, because there are the cases in disasters in around the globe that we found the people alive after 7 days as well. But one thing is quite clear, because the extent of devastation and the flood coming through the upstream around kilometer per hour with that speed in a very narrow valley in the border town of China and Nepal, the chances of surviving is very less, but there can be a miracle in every disaster. So I'm very optimistic that we'll find the people alive.
And for those that have survived but have unfortunately lost their homes, what's currently being done at the moment to support them?
This is the major challenge. So government of Nepal is trying to make a temporary shelter to bring those people to the new area and for safe in the intermediate period. And people, they are donating money and food, clothes and everything for them. Yes, but the problem or the challenge is that how many people are still there or stranded in remnant houses. So that's why the security forces are really working to find it out. Once we have a data, then we can actually classify the area, depends upon the severity of the impact for rescue and relief operations.
And you mentioned how unprecedented this is. Do we have a sense of what caused such a disaster on this scale?
Yes, this is the major challenge for scientific communities like us. We are trying hard to understand why, what was the cause. We don't know it, but if you look on the scenario of the climate change, the temperature increase, if you look the global average temperature increase in the Himalaya is experiencing double rise of the temperature. So the temperature increase might create that fell, but as a scientist for the climate attribution, we didn't have particular data of that area. So that's why I cannot say 100%, but we can incline the interpretation of the causes to that direction.
And given that it could be climate related, is there possibly a chance that this won't be a one-off and something like this could happen again in the future?
I mean, if you look in the past history, not only in the Nepal Himalaya, but from Hunza Valley in Pakistan or northwest Indian part like Chamoli and other Uttarakhand, and then in Nepal and in Lunak Lake outburst flood in Sikkim, and in Phuncholing area, the debris flow in Bhutan. So if you look whole mountain Hindu Kush Himalayan chain, we have witnesses many examples like this. And in this particular valley, there was a disaster last year. So supraglacial lake flush was occurred in Tibetan part of China, and we had similar kind of events. So that's why the events were there, and events are there, events will be there, but the major problem or the major risks or the challenge is that the number of such extreme events are increasing, and that is the great threat for the Himalayan people.
And you're on the ground, and what's the mood among the public in Nepal, among the Nepalese people?
As I already mentioned, this is very unprecedented. We did not expect that in that particular region, although we were monitoring some of the largest glacial lake to understand the glacial lake outburst flood, but this is ice collapse or a rock avalanche. So people are very much afraid, and especially to the ground zero where they lost their family, they lost their life. Our more than 300 tourists are missing, so our security forces are missing. There are hydropower stations. People were working in the tunnel or in the jam. So some of my friends are still missing. So we are very much worried to have information of our loved ones. At the same time, people are very much open and very much active for rescue and relief operations, which is very, very good for the government of Nepal to do the rescue operation.
And just finally, Dr. Adhikari, what will you be monitoring over the coming days, since this is very much an ongoing situation?
For this particular event, we will monitor two things. One, whether there will be another landslide or the rockfall on that particular area, because now the mouth of the glacier just detached, and there's a huge mass of glacier. So we have to monitor that. And another one is that the lake which are being formed on that particular. So what would be the the scenario or the accumulation of water in that particular lake? So from that particular area, but as a whole Himalayan chain, we will be colleagues around the globe, because Nepal does not have light. So we are asking our international friends to tax the satellite for the real-time monitoring of that stations and other part of risky area. So that will be my interest along with the rescue effort that is started by the government of Nepal.
It's been really great to get your insight from on the ground. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us on the programme today.
Thank you.
Now, to some other news now, and one of North America's Great Lakes has become the latest flashpoint on the ongoing trade dispute between the US and Canada. The decision by the White House to rename Lake Ontario comes after Washington imposed 50% tariffs on some of Canada's most important exports last week.
US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order seeking to rename Lake Ontario as Lake America. A White House aide said the order directs the US Department of the Interior and Secretary Doug Burgum to carry out the change, with the new name taking effect immediately on the US side.
And finally, I guess the purpose of this more than anything else is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order.
Lake Ontario is one of North America's 5 Great Lakes. It sits between the Canadian province of Ontario and the US state of New York. For Canada, the message from Ottawa is clear. The lake will remain Lake Ontario. In a post on X, Prime Minister Mark Carney said the name is more than 400 years old. He said it predates both the creation of Canada and the United States.
It's ridiculous. I'm behind Carney all the way, and I'm from Alberta, and so I'm kind of embarrassed to say I'm from Alberta because our Premier isn't on Team Canada 100%, but as individuals in Alberta, there are lots of us who are on Team Canada with Carney to stand up to Trump in any possible way, and there is no way that that is Lake America. It's Lake Ontario.
It should be left as it was originally. There's no reason just bullying. America think that they can just bully the world at the moment, and it's not on. It all stems from these trade negotiations, and Canada has got the upper hand all the time.
The dispute comes at a sensitive time for US-Canada relations. Trade talks between the two countries broke down last week after 3 days of intensive negotiations. Washington and Ottawa have each blamed the other for the collapse.
Meanwhile, President Trump says he believes Russia's President Putin is not planning an attack on NATO territory. Trump's claims come despite US intelligence reports which suggest Vladimir Putin may be preparing to authorize sabotage or other activities in Europe to test NATO's unity and support for Ukraine.
I've had good talks with him. He's not going to be attacking a NATO territory. So far, I think Russia's behaved quite well having to do with the Strait of Hormuz. And you have to understand, for everything they do, we do also.
South Korea, Japan and the United States will hold joint military drills next month to strengthen readiness against North Korea's missile and nuclear threats. The annual Freedom Edge exercise will take place from September 9th to the 11th in international waters near the Korean peninsula. Seoul says the drills are defensive in nature. The exercises come after President Trump scaled back some joint military activities with South Korea and cancelled a planned Marine Corps drill. Trump has also been seeking renewed engagement with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un following their meetings in 2018 and 2019. Norway's King Harald V has died at the age of 89 after being treated in hospital for a rare blood condition. The Royal Palace in Oslo said the monarch passed away peacefully at the National Hospital early Friday morning. Members of the royal family had visited him before his death, while people gathered outside the palace to leave flowers and pay tribute. Harald became king in 1991 and served on the throne for 35 years. He was Norway's first monarch born in the country since the 14th century. He will be succeeded by his son, Crown Prince Haakon. After the break, Iran says it is preparing conditions to reopen the Strait of Hormuz as the conflict reaches the 6-month mark. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to A News. As the Israeli-US war against Iran reaches 6 months, mediators from 3 regional countries visited Tehran in the past week. A News' correspondent Tarar Shirarulu reports on the latest.
The Israeli-US war against Iran, which broke out on 28th of February, entered its 7th month on Friday, while the capital Tehran hosted high-ranking officials from the regional countries, Pakistan, Oman and Qatar, to negotiate a way out of the current stalemate. Following the expiry of the fragile ceasefire deal between Tehran and Washington and stalled peace talks, renewed mediation efforts hit a fresh impasse with the announcement of stricter U.S. economic sanctions on Iran last week. Pakistani Army Chief and top negotiator in the indirect Iran-U.S. talks, Field Marshal Asim Munir, was the first dignitary to visit Tehran on Monday in a bid to revitalize the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding signed by Iranian and U.S. presidents in June. He was followed by Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who visited Iran's capital on Tuesday with an agenda to negotiate a bilateral agreement with the Islamic Republic about maritime traffic at the Strait of Hormuz. As the two littoral states at the strategic waterway linking the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, their top diplomats issued a joint statement saying Tehran and Muscat agreed on a provisional corridor at the narrow waterway and demining the strait. Tehran also hosted the Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammed Al Thani on Thursday, who, according to unconfirmed news reports, was carrying a message from the U.S. side for Iranian officials. Besides Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the visiting Pakistani, Omani, and Qatari officials met Iranian President, Parliament Speaker, and key negotiator, and Secretary of Supreme National Security Council and former Revolutionary Guards commander. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Well, when the US and Israel launched the war on Iran in late February, President Trump initially predicted it would last 4 to 5 weeks. 6 months later, the war is still going with no clear end in sight. Here's more.
On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a massive joint military operation against Iran. At the time, US President Donald Trump said it would probably last 4 to 5 weeks. 6 months later, much has happened, and neither side has achieved a clear victory or brought the war to an end. But there have been major consequences. The war has shaken the global economy. It has caused major disruptions to global energy markets. Today, oil prices remain high, inflation has surged, and economic growth has slowed. There has been damage to both countries' militaries. Iran's military infrastructure has been severely degraded, including its air defenses, missile sites, and leadership. Many of Iran's top security officials and clerical leaders died in the initial wave of strikes. The country's national figurehead and religious leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was also killed. The US military has also suffered losses in terms of drones and aircraft, whether to Iranian fire or with accidents. An estimate by the Center for Strategic and International Studies said that by July, the US had used up about 2/3 of its Patriot interceptors. The war has also touched people's lives on both sides. Americans are weighing the economic costs and the prospect of a prolonged conflict that many didn't want in the first place.
Clearly it's not working. It's costing all the people of the United States lots of money. It's not getting any results that are good for our country. And clearly it's basically just an ego trip, but you know, we're pretty used to that now.
The same pressure is being felt in Iran. Shopkeepers say expanded US sanctions are worsening their economic hardship, and not enough is being done to support everyday people.
In the way that we are under pressure, we are 100% distressed. The youth have many grievances against the officials who, really, in my opinion, they are traitors. Why? Because they truly do not attend to the people suffering. To me, being a responsible official means that the person should not rest. They should have iron shoes on their feet and be in the middle of the field alongside the people.
6 months into a war that was expected to last weeks, the fighting continues, costs are rising, and nobody knows when it will come to an end.
Well, let's get more on this. As 6 months into the conflict, the impact is being felt across different industries in Iran. In the south of the country, fishermen and traders say security concerns and fuel shortages are disrupting their livelihoods, while seafood prices are rising sharply.
The war has hit Iran's fishing industry, with fewer boats heading out to sea causing seafood prices to rise. At the fish market in the southern port city of Bandar Abbas, traders say they're growing more concerned about security as fuel supplies are being squeezed.
The war has limited our fishing. Our fishermen rarely go out to sea now. It's nothing like before. Another impact has been on fuel supplies. Less fuel is reaching the boats, which has made matters even worse. As a result, fewer fish are being caught, and that drives up fish prices.
Bandar Abbas is one of Iran's most important coastal cities. It sits on the Strait of Hormuz, a vital shipping route for global energy supplies, but shipping has been severely disrupted since the end of February. The disruption comes as the war enters its 6th month, with no clear path to ending the conflict. President Donald Trump had previously predicted the war would be over in 4 weeks. Now, in apparent recognition that further military strikes won't force concessions from Iran, the United States is reverting to a campaign of economic pressure in hopes of further weakening Iran's government. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told allies the US is unlikely to launch new attacks for the time being. But what happens next is unclear. For fishermen and fish traders in Bandar Abbas, the impact is already clear.
Turkey has dramatically increased diesel imports from the United States and India as disruptions to traditional supply routes force buyers to look further afield. Shipments from both countries have reached record levels this month, while Ankara's reliance on Russian diesel has fallen significantly. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkey is diversifying its diesel supplies as Russian export restrictions and disruptions caused by the US-Iran conflict reshape regional energy flows. Data from commodities firm Kepler shows that Turkey imported more than 120,000 barrels per day of Indian diesel in August. Imports from the United States, meanwhile, reached around 90,000 barrels per day. These are the highest monthly volumes from both countries in Kepler data going back to 2017. Energy Aspects, a market data provider, estimates somewhat lower volumes, but also points to a sharp increase in shipments from both countries. The shift comes as Turkey receives significantly less diesel from Russia, which has long been its main supplier. Russia recently banned diesel exports until at least the end of August, after Ukrainian strikes on its oil refineries disrupted domestic supplies. Meanwhile, war damage to Middle Eastern refineries and reduced shipping through the Strait of Hormuz have further constrained regional supplies, forcing Turkish importers to seek alternative sources. Kepler estimates that Russian diesel shipments to Turkey fell to around 80,000 barrels per day in August, down from more than 200,000 barrels per day during the earlier months of this year. Russia's share of Turkey's total diesel imports has consequently dropped to roughly 20%, marking a significant change. In 2025, Russia supplied around 85% of Turkey's imported diesel, according to the country's energy regulator. And the supply diversification may be set to continue into the short term. According to industry sources, Moscow may extend its diesel export ban into September, potentially keeping Turkey reliant on alternative suppliers like the US and India even longer. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
At least 12 people have been killed in wildfires in Algeria. The country is grappling with the aftermath of an intense heat wave that has led to tinder-dry conditions. Communities through northeastern parts of the country are addressing the damage left behind.
In Algeria, where wildfires have killed at least 12 people, firefighters continue to tackle blazes across several provinces amid a severe heat wave. Residents in the village of Anchid in Jijel province inspected the damage on Thursday, a day after the fires swept through the region. Algeria's Interior Ministry says 5 people were killed in Jijel, 4 in Bajaya, and 3 in Tizi Ouzou, while 54 others suffered burn injuries, including 6 in critical condition.
These wildfires have impacted all of us this year. We have not witnessed this in our entire life, never known in the history of this mountain. The fire has left neither the dry nor the green.
The fires came from the mountain in the Tagrast region at night, and in moments it spread everywhere with smoke. The person who was driving this vehicle was surprised by the fires, so he left it and ran away to save himself. We left our homes and ran away to town of Borj Tahar. We are sleeping out in the open. The fires destroyed everything.
Residents described the devastation caused by the wildfires, saying they have lost their homes and property as the flames swept through their communities. Algeria's Civil Protection Services recorded 154 wildfires across the country on Wednesday. Béjaïa alone saw 36 fires, with 18 brought under control. The fires come as an intense heat wave continues to affect North Africa, particularly Algeria and neighboring Tunisia.
Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky met Moldova's President Maya Sandu on Thursday. Moldova was marking its Independence Day days after Ukraine did the same. Sandu said Russian drones violated Moldovan airspace 5 times overnight during a major attack on Ukraine. One drone was later found on Moldovan territory. The two leaders discussed closer cooperation on security, energy and infrastructure. Zelensky voiced support for Moldova's EU membership bid, saying he hopes the two countries would eventually join the bloc together.
Support your way to EU, and I'm sure that it will be one day. I wish you not to wait too much. Yes, I hope that we will be in the EU together.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has called on the EU to keep its future budget affordable, calling for radical spending cuts and job freezes at the bloc's institutions. Speaking alongside the leaders of Austria, Denmark and Finland in Berlin, Merz said current proposals could increase EU spending by up to 60%. He said the plans should be reduced by several hundred billion euros.
We want to conclude the extremely difficult and complex negotiations on the multi-annual financial framework, if possible, by the end of 2026. That's not essential, but it would be desirable if we can achieve it because the next multi-annual financial framework enters into force on January 1st, 2028, and there should be clarity by then. Realism also means that the EU budget must remain affordable. The current proposals envisage an increase of up to 60%.
After the break, protesters in Pakistan call for answers after the fatal hospital fire that killed 14 newborn babies. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. A candlelight vigil was held in Islamabad for newborns killed in a hospital fire. The gathering brought grief and demands for accountability as questions remain over how the tragedy occurred.
More than a dozen people held a candlelight vigil outside the nursery ward in Islamabad on Thursday, mourning 14 newborns killed in a hospital fire. The protesters called for accountability and demanded answers over the deaths.
I'm here to show my solidarity with the parents who got these children after prayers, after waiting, the mothers who had to go through C-section to have these children, and they lost them without even holding them in their own hands and without kissing their faces. And what do they get? Charred bodies of those little babies. I'm here in solidarity with those parents.
Our gathering here also serves to voice specific demands. A primary demand is for accountability regarding this entire situation, specifically how things reached this point.
The fire broke out at the Pakistan Institute of Medical Sciences on Wednesday. Only one of the 15 babies in the nursery survived.
Kazakhstan is entering a new phase of a major political overhaul, with the government stepping down as the country's newly elected parliament begins its work. The changes follow the introduction of a new constitution which has reshaped both the legislature and the process of forming the government. Our correspondent Fariza Kalamerzina has more.
Kazakhstan's government has formally stepped down before the newly elected Kurultai as the country begins implementing major changes under its new constitution. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has signed a decree confirming the government's resignation. The move is part of a planned constitutional procedure following the formation of the country's new legislature. But Kazakhstan will not be left without a functioning government. Prime Minister Uljas Bektenov, his deputies and the current ministers will continue serving in an acting capacity until a new cabinet is formed. Some of them could also be reappointed. The resignation comes as that new legislature begins its work in Astana. President Tokayev has opened the first session of the Kurultai, Kazakhstan's new 145-seat single-chamber parliament, which replaces the former two-chamber system of the Majlis and the Senate. The first elections to the Kurultai were held on August the 23rd, with 5 political parties securing seats. Opening its first session, Tokayev said the new parliament marks the beginning of a new stage in Kazakhstan's political system. And this is more than simply change in the structure of parliament. The Kurultai has been given broader powers and a greater role in shaping both the executive and the judicial system. Lawmakers can hold a vote of no confidence in their government and propose the dismissal of individual ministers. The Kurultai will also have a role in appointments to several key state institutions, including the Constitutional Court and the Central Election Commission. President Tokayev has nominated Aybek Dadibay to become the Kurultai's first speaker. Dadibay previously served as head of Kazakhstan's presidential administration and has led the Adilet political party since May. And once the Kurultai structure is fully in place, attention will turn to the formation of the new government. Tokayev says he will submit his nominees for vice president and prime minister to lawmakers before appointing the new cabinet following consultations with parliament. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Tbilisi's skyline is losing one of its most talked about landmarks. The city's striking Reich Tubes complex, a symbol of the country's post-Soviet architectural ambitions, is now being torn down, sparking a clash between officials, architects and residents over how Georgia treats its recent past. Nini Nikolaishvili has the story from Tbilisi.
Demolition crews are dismantling Tbilisi's Reich Park Music Theatre and Exhibition Hall, the tubular structure locals call the Reich Tubes, after City Hall approved the teardown in June. Work began in late July and is set to wrap by December of 2025. Built between 2011 and 2012 under former President Mikhail Saakashvili's government, the building was meant to host concerts and exhibitions but was never finished after Georgian Dream took power in 2012, leaving it unused for over a decade. Prime Minister Irakli Tabakhdze has defended the decision, saying that this ugliness does not befit our beautiful capital. But the building's designers, Italian architects Massimiliano and Doriana Fuxas, say they were never even warned that demolition was coming. Massimiliano insists you cannot cancel buildings, you cannot cancel memories. Even among local people who never liked the design, some nevertheless objected to its destruction.
Personally, I don't like the way it looks visually, but I think that at this point, the state's priority should be construction, not destruction. There are many other things to do, and I don't think it's worth wasting money or energy on destroying this. There are many other things to do, even free school meals, which people have been talking about for a long time. People don't have medicine. There are basic things that need to be done, and in my opinion, now is not the time for destruction.
It was a symbol of Tbilisi. All the tourists, like the bridge, considered it a wonderful symbol. They took great photos of this landmark, and it was one of the symbols of the city. And now they're going to build something else, and it breaks my heart.
The site's owner, Reich Dom, plans to build a hotel in its place, part of a broader real estate deal requiring at least 44 million lari in investment by 2030. Critics argue the demolition is less about aesthetics and more about erasing a symbol tied to the previous government. Ugly or not, the Reich tubes had become part of Georgia's architectural identity, adding a distinct exotic character to Tbilisi's skyline that many say shouldn't simply be bulldozed away. For now, tourists are rushing to photograph the structure before it disappears for good. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has been speaking out over the corruption scandal implicating his predecessor, Robert Kocharyan. He said Armenia's former presidents should live on their pensions and legal income and warned any assets acquired illegally must be returned to the Armenian state and its people. Kocharyan is accused of using his position to acquire public property at below market value prices during his 10 years in office.
If this is a question of giving instructions, I am not instructing the judicial system. I am demanding from it, especially since that judge has already retired. Go and look into his and his family's entire assets, both in Armenia and abroad. We are now cooperating with international anti-corruption networks, and Armenia's law enforcement system is cooperating with them. Go and see what his relatives are involved in. Could it turn out that they are, once again, talented business people, each a millionaire or even a billionaire? We have to go after everyone. Them, their mothers-in-law, sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, everyone. They must explain why criminals like Serge Sarkisyan and Robert Kocharyan are still free.
Earlier, we spoke with Akbar Nouruz, geopolitical analyst based in Baku, about the latest developments in Armenia and trial process of its former leaders. Let's take a look.
This case is simultaneously a legal event, a domestic political restructuring, as Pashinyan assesses, and it has all those layers that has been connected between one another, and this whole assessment could be analyzed in way more, many point of views and layers. At the legal level, the charges have serious grounds. Of course, the question surrounding around Kocharyan's abusement of power during his presidency that happened in the 2008 crackdown, and the systematic looting of the state assets and the construction of political business networks in Russia, and as in return, the establishment of Russian influence in Armenia's institutional architecture is, of course, not something that has been ambiguous, as they say. But what has been ambiguous for nearly 2 decades is whether Armenian government had the political will or any sort of consolidation in terms of establishing this kind of willpower on these figures. That includes Kocharyan, Sarokyan, and Serge Sarkisyan. Because Kocharyan is regarded as one of Russia's closest political allies in the post-Soviet space, and persecuting him carried a huge diplomatic cost playable Kremlin. And certainly, ever since the war in Ukraine, and all the countries in the post-Soviet space have been able to gain a room to breathe, as they say, because in the war in Ukraine has gave the countries surrounding the region in Russia, that includes South Caucasus and the Central Asia predominantly, being able to establish a willpower towards willpower and economic power as well in the long run. And Russia, of course, systematically exhausted its leverage instruments over Armenia in the past 2 years, as we have seen. The Armenian agricultural exports backfired, as we see, then it accelerated the opening of the European markets to Armenian products, and with agricultural exports, the EU rising 80% over the few months, let's say. And the re-establishment of relationship between Azerbaijan and Turkey possibly has accelerated Azerbaijan's fuel exports to Armenia, removing the energy blackmail that has been tool for the Kremlin as well. But with all that political issues aside, this event also serves as a big, has lots of questions to answer, in my opinion, and this is more related between the Armenia's stance and Armenia's reforms. As Pashinyan stated, it needs lots of legal assessments, and this political reform is not going to be easy, in my opinion.
Hospitals are overwhelmed in Afghanistan as UNICEF says 3.7 million children are currently suffering from acute malnutrition. The latest figures come as the country faces a deepening malnutrition crisis. Our correspondent has the details from Kabul.
Afghanistan's youngest children are the most affected by malnutrition. That's what UNICEF is saying, adding that hospitals in some parts of the country are struggling to cope with the growing number of cases. According to the United Nations agency, 3.7 million children across the country are suffering from acute wasting, including around 1 million with severe acute malnutrition. Children under the age of 2 account for 83% of severe acute malnutrition cases, while nearly 40% of the children hospitalized under 6 months old have severe wasting and medical complications. Hospitals are under growing pressure, with some in southern Afghanistan treating 3 to 4 severely malnourished children per bed. Meanwhile, complicated cases have risen by a third, from 6,000 in July 2025 to 8,000 this July. UNICEF says the crisis is being driven by food insecurity, repeated droughts and floods, regional instability and growing pressure on jobs and public services. The return of more than 6 million people since 2023 has also placed additional strain on already stretched housing and health services. Funding shortages are also severely limiting treatment. UNICEF nutrition programs received just 22% of the $180 million it needs. This severe resource gap has forced more than 100 wasting centers to close this year. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
And finally, tourism across Central Asia is already growing as countries in the region look to make travel between them easier and attract more visitors. Here's more from Sevil Rajapova in Tashkent.
Central Asia could be one step closer to becoming a single tourism destination. At the Trade Dialogue in Central Asia 2026 forum in Osh, Kyrgyzstan proposed creating green corridors at border crossings for tourist groups. The country also suggested introducing a unified tourist visa for Central Asian countries. The aim is to make travel between neighboring countries faster and easier, while encouraging tourists to visit several destinations during the same trip. That could be particularly important for intra-regional tourism. In 2025, Uzbekistan accounted for 25% of tourism flows within Central Asia, followed by Kazakhstan with 23% and Kyrgyzstan with 18%. Travel between the countries is already supported by strong regional demand. Visitors from Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan and Tajikistan are among the leading sources of tourists for Uzbekistan. The economic potential is also growing. Tourists spent an estimated $15.4 billion across Central Asia in 2025, with international visitors accounting for almost $10 billion. For the region, the proposed measures could help turn separate national tourism markets into a more connected destination and allow travelers to combine Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and other Central Asian countries in a single trip. Representatives of Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan have agreed to coordinate further work on regional tourism clusters and prepare a final communique. Sevil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
That's all we've got time for this afternoon. From all of us here in the studio, thank you very much for watching and stay tuned to A News for more updates throughout the day.